Welcome to the Complexio podcast. Complexio is the intelligence layer for enterprise AI. It automatically builds a connected understanding of your business to automate workflows across people, processes, and systems. In today's episode, we will hear from Marfin Management CEO Alex Albertini. Marfin was an early investor in Complexio and one of the first organizations to bring the platform into a live operational environment. Alex shares a leadership perspective on early-stage AI adoption. We talk about trust, the realities of guiding change, and why automation should be seen as a way to strengthen people rather than reduce headcounts. He also discusses how unbiased analysis can outperform traditional consultancy, why SMEs do not need heavy integration work to get started, and how understanding becomes the foundation for clearer decisions, better alignment, and more adaptable teams. Hello and welcome to the Complexio podcast, Alex. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you, Cecilia.
Now, it's exciting to sit down with you because you have experienced Complexio from the start. And you came in early on as an investor and also became an R&D environment for Complexio. Now, Marfin is a multi-generational company. You've seen the industry and your own business evolve through several industry and technical revolutions. So just more for you, what makes you curious to stay ahead in this industry and adapt new technologies as they come?
Well, first of all, personally, I've always been curious about tech. I've always looked forward to innovation. And I was always very curious about why this legacy industry was never really at the forefront of innovation. As a small company, we had the privilege to be able to experiment new technologies and IT technologies early on. And I've always thought that if you are not living with your time, you lose the train and therefore you lose competitiveness.
So AI then must have appealed to you in that sense, but what kind of was the operational structure around it, Marfin? You develop your own systems and tools. You're already very technically capable as a company. So what were you operating with before Complexio? So what sort of industry tools, legacy tools, and your own systems did you have in place?
So we earlier on, as IT started coming in, found out that whatever systems or software was out there in the market was not really fulfilling our needs. So as control freaks as we are, we decided to build our own tools and to start completely integrating our own system to everything that we do. And apart from the legacy systems of Microsoft, we were using professionally custom-built in-house software for all the specific needs that we had related to shipping industry. In terms of AI, we were looking into it, but like everybody else, I think the initial thought was we were very scared about it. So on one side, very curious. On the other side, we were actually turning our backs to it. And when Complexio came in with their expertise, it gave us a different perspective to it.
And what exactly, you mentioned fears there, what was it more on is this something that we can trust, or is it more, was it staff kind of feeling, oh, we're going to get replaced? Can you describe a little bit more about that fear that you felt?
Absolutely. I mean, it's first of all, it's the human fear of being replaced by the machine. I think it's a natural psychological fear that we have, that we as humans becomes purposeless if a machine can do exactly what we do or even better. And I think it's a grown fear that we can see everywhere. But then we realize that the machine on its own cannot work. And we as humans have the power to actually, as enhanced as we can be with the machine, create even better things. The knowledge and the rapidity, the fastness at which, the machine can give us the information creates an amount of different possibilities that we can leverage. So as everybody else, I was scared because I said, oh my God, I'm going to be completely useless. Then I said, okay, actually, probably not. And let's see how we can use it. Of course, internally, the communication is a little bit different because the first fear that everyone has in a company is that they're going to lose their job. So before even starting to mention AI, I actually started telling everybody that their job was not at risk. And then I mentioned that we were using AI tools.
So a good leader, making everyone calm and then saying, okay, but this is how we progress as we go forward. Shipping is a very interesting environment for any technology to develop in. It's multiple industries in one, right? You have so much going on. So there's not just lots of tools, there's lots of departments, lots of niches within each or within the whole industry. And what challenges does that face or present to a company such as Marfin?
You described it pretty well. I mean, we in a shipping company work many departments. We have legal, we have commercial, we have operational, logistics at every different level, either in or out, and HR with a workforce which needs to be shipped across the world to actually join the ships. So we're working in an environment which is multi-jurisdiction with different compliances, different regulations, different people all around the world, and 365 days, 24/7. So it is complex in many different ways. And customers all around the world with different culture, different nationalities, different languages. So in terms of adaptiveness and systems, one doesn't fit all. So we need to be specialized in legal matters, in commercial matters, in HR. And basically we feel like very general way of we have to touch every scale in the company and be more or less good at everything in order to be able to run a shipping company.
And as we mentioned already, you were kind of addressing that by developing your own tools. But what were some things that you felt you kept on sort of facing? Were there any challenges that, despite having this capability yourselves, were there certain challenges that kept on coming up that you weren't able to resolve through, for example, the tools that existed or the tools that you were developing yourselves?
I mean, first of all, the issues that we mainly had because of running our own tools was that we weren't bringing the tools quick enough because we were lacking the resources. I mean, that's probably due to the size of our company. And also, the moment you bring a tool out, it's a tool that does what you used to do and what not the future needs you to do. So you're always chasing behind and trying to update a system. Whenever it's ready, it's already nearly obsolete. But I think probably that's true for every kit of software or legacy software that we used to have. And being able to catch up with the speed of the evolution is harder and harder. And especially now with AI, it's even more pronounced. So unless you let the AI catch up with the pace, or you're even much more far behind.
There's also the factor of the more tools you add in, the more the humans end up doing kind of the glue work between the systems, right? So was that something that your employees were facing?
One of the reasons why we wanted to actually build our own tool is to try and have something which was united and we didn't have to repeat the work of data entry. Having said that, we were not failing that problem even with our own system because it's impossible, to actually have everything integrated and to anticipate every need that comes up, especially when you need to rely on communication with many different parties. They all need different information in different formats. So at the end of the day, the copy-paste email and Excel comes back, right? Every time. So yeah, there's a lot of that coming back.
As we mentioned earlier, you came in early into Complexio's story. Based on what we just said, was there anything of that made you go, this is interesting? Or what was it about Complexio that made you take the step into becoming an investor and into being really an integral part of the development of this technology?
The part which attracted me was a little bit about the vision and the capacity to have a system which was integrated in your own corporate environment. So security, privacy, and making sure that your data stays where it needs to be with a system that computes the information just for you and doesn't learn for other people or leaks. That was one of the priorities. The capacities of being able to have a system that learns from all the data that is unstructured was for me the key point. Either from emails, from chat, and future from voice or video in a meeting room is something that appealed to me very much, because the lack of information or the amount of information that we miss into our structured data information systems is huge. And having the ability to leverage that information was for me the first point that actually attracted me to it.
Yeah, and I imagine especially within your operations, as we said, there's people all over the world, you're constantly communicating. It is very easy to miss something. I think we've all woken up to an email chain that was one email when you went to bed, and in the morning it's now about 20 things that you need to follow up on. So having something like Complexio that can look at that and then go into your, as you said, your structured data, your databases, all of this, and unify it. Had you seen that before, or was that something?
No, I've never seen that before. It's funny because when you say the email chain that you miss, it makes me think, about an email chain of 20 replies. And the only thing that you actually read at the end of the day is the signature of everyone, right? So you completely miss the body of the information, and you lose more time in trying to navigate into it. With AI and especially Complexio, we resolve that in a way, because the capacity to actually go through the noise and wipe it out has been incredible. And it's for me what the future brings in terms of quality of information, details of understanding, which we are submerged by too much information. And our brain capacity to distinguish noise towards real information is now becoming limited. And with new AI system and the capacity of them to actually find the proper relevance, I think we're getting to a place where we're finally getting to what is the noise and what is not, and being able to lead us towards informated decisions.
Yeah, and you mentioned that understanding, which is obviously a core part of Complexio's technology. What do you think that adds to a business to have something that understands you and understands not just how you do business and how processes happen and what's needed, but also where you find information and how information flows through your organization? What does that add in terms of operational efficiency for you?
I'll make a step back and try to look at how we were looking at information before. Before, we were thinking about what kind of information we needed, and then we were trying to find out the information where we can find it, and then we were working out a workflow to automate the information, or at least to structure the information, mostly with human entry. We moved a little bit more towards automated entries in many different ways, and where Complexio brought us a completely new dimension is that instead of trying to map out what we need to understand, it just understands and gives you a map that you weren't even thinking before. So the insight that I got through Complexio was much more than I even expected. The granularity of the data that we're getting, the level of understanding of the workflows, even the minimum little workflow that one human being could do in the company was mapped out, which for me gave me a completely new perspective on how we were working, what everybody was doing, how they were performing the tasks. And even sometimes, oh my God, we're still doing this like that after 40 years. So, for a company which is as old as we are, I'm constantly fighting the habits of the experienced members of the staff, which do the things because they've always done it like that. And when we can understand the workflow, we can easily show, is there a real reason for it to be done like that? Is it still valid? Or should we change it for the sake of being better at it?
Now, that's interesting what you point out, that sometimes we as humans, we can work against ourselves when we say, no, but I've always done it like that and I still want to keep doing it. So that's a really interesting point that you raised there. But at the same time, there's also things that humans do that machines never have been able to do themselves because they don't understand the intent or the context behind an action. It's just, okay, here's the way that we present the information, right? You mentioned getting that full understanding of your company. When the very first time that Complexio mapped out Marfin, what was, you already alluded to a lot of it, but what was sort of the first impression that you had seeing your company mapped out in that way?
My first reaction was, wow. I didn't really go into the details of the knowledge graph. I went and looked at the dashboard, the traces and all of that, and the reasoning of the analysis of the workflows, and the granularity, the complexity of the information that was given, and the whole reasoning behind every information, and the traceability of that reasoning was really very interesting and actually quite new, because whatever tools I've used about AI was you put something in, you get something out, and you don't know what's in the middle. In this case, everything is traced. You know exactly why the information is there, where it comes from. Whenever you have an output, there's a reasoning behind which you can question. Does that apply to your business or not? Is that purely trustful? And Complexio came in with understanding our business. And this was, the key points where it bluffed me is that it knew what a ship was, it knew what a port was, it knew what a cargo was, which are really specific to our business. And this on its own.
And you mentioned there a little bit what we spoke about earlier about the trust versus the fear. So seeing all of this, it must have been quite reassuring for you as a leader, and also in then showing your employees and then incorporating this into your organization, that actually we can trace what's happening inside of our company.
Absolutely. But the interesting part is that while we were working with Complexio, I started questioning how much do we trust human being towards what we trust the machine. And with a little bit of research, I ended up figuring out that it's natural to trust the machine much less than we trust a human being. And yet the human being is actually making much more mistakes. Apparently the reliability of humans is about 70%. And yet if a machine doesn't reach 100%, we don't trust the machine. So I'm not saying that the machine is not reliable at all. On the contrary, I think what Complexio did is actually towards the close to the 100%. And that's where it's very interesting to see how people start trusting the machine when they see that it does it consistently again and again and again. And then all of a sudden, people stop questioning the reliability and they just go with it.
You've had Complexio inside of your operations for a while, but you have in September went live with a couple of deployments of automations. So there were 200 automation opportunities across 9 domains, with 30 of them being deployment ready, and you chose 5 of them to start off with. Did you have any choice in prioritizing which ones, and what was the assessment that went into which one you would go into first?
The assessments were human. We wanted to make sure that it was a workflow that would help as much as possible the people at stake without completely disturbing their workflows and their day-to-day work, but actually helping them to actually perform better. So we went into something which is highly data intensive, with a lot of manual input, sometimes duplication or triplication of the task because the system were not integrated, and something to teach our staff that they can trust the system. So it's all about management of change. I think the biggest problem we're going to face in organization by introducing AI is the speed at which top management will want the change to happen and the capacity of the teams to actually integrate that change. So management of change is going to be a key role into the next couple of years. I think technology is going to be there quickly, especially with Complexio. But the problem is adapting the teams to actually evolve to the change with all the problems that we mentioned before. And then it's all about the management capacity to introduce that change in a way where everybody can express themselves. I've always taken the approach that when you have a 30 or 50% increase in productivity, that doesn't mean that you need to reduce 30 or 50% of the staff. You actually have a unique opportunity to actually grow without hiring anyone.
Yeah, which is very reassuring because, again, coming back to the fear, that's the fear that most people think of, or where we've seen even very big corporations going, oh, we're going to implement AI and we're going to reduce our workforce by this, which I agree with you is a very limited way of looking at your business, but also you're missing a larger impact or opportunity that you do have, which is really kind of unleashing the human side of business again, or of work rather. Has this management of change that you mentioned, how has that played out inside of you? I know it's very early days still, but have you seen any difference inside of Marfin since you have deployed these automations, and how are people taking to it now?
To be honest, we've not deployed them full scale within the whole company, and we selected a certain department which is closer to the innovation and technology, enabling us also to assess the reaction of everybody within the changes. So there's the technological aspect and the human aspect that we're actually trying to assess at the same time. So technology is in the hand of Complexio, the human aspect is in my hands.
Which I think is the right way to do it. So do you think that this technology that you now have running, would that have been possible for you with other more traditional approaches? If we take, normally you have a consultancy coming in saying, okay, this is how you work, this is where we see inefficiencies, this is what you should be doing. How would you compare the approach that Complexio has done inside of Marfin with that, and what was kind of how has that journey been for you?
First of all, small companies don't rely much on consultants, or at least mine. I never really had the habit to actually phone a consultant whenever I have a problem. I try to solve it myself. So having a capacity to have a tool that gives you an analysis in depth at the same level of quality or better than possibly consultants gives me basically free access to consultancy without relying on expensive man hours and having someone in-house that you need to spend time with, which actually eats a lot of resources money-wise and human-wise, because having somebody in the company that asks questions and makes audits, ultimately the result is great because you have an amazing amount of insights, but also it takes a lot of time of the staff. So if you're a small company, you're most certainly under-resourced, and you create a bottleneck and a pressure point for the staff who never really understands why we have to do all of this. When top management pushes something like that, it's always taken quite reluctantly. And having a non-human consultant brings an unbiased result, because no offense to the consultants, but ultimately their goal is to build you human hours into actually implementing processes and creating workflows after that. With a tool, the ultimate goal is to just give the information and ultimately create automation. So there's no bias of finding, the low-hanging fruit that will create the biggest use case, that will create the biggest invoice at the end. So here, we have an unbiased information totally available where we can pick and choose the one that makes more sense for us.
Yeah, and kind of removes that skepticism that, no offense to consultants who might be listening, but you do look at everything that gets suggested to you with the skepticism of, okay, is this really in my best interest, or is this in the interest of your company to build me exactly what you were saying? So it's interesting that you say that having that technology gives you an unbiased full view of your company.
But there's probably even more space for them to evolve into some different form of services, because the analysis probably is going to be done by machines now, and then they can step in and work better with a human intervention in terms of helping the company go through the change and implement this automation in a better way.
Yeah, which I completely agree with you. And if there was a technology out there that can give you the full understanding of a company, I'm sure that would appeal to them as well, right? So
hopefully.
You have your data already fully centralized in your company, right? And you have your own tools and all of this. Did that make this integration of Complexio into your company smoother, or did you find that I'm going to backtrack a little bit. There are some fears sometimes for companies who want to employ an AI solution, but they feel, okay, we have to get our data ready for it. We have to look at, there's so many steps that come beforehand to even just begin the process of implementing some sort of AI technology. For you, what did that process look like, and what was the experience of it?
I think I'm being fortunate to the fact that we control probably 100% of the information that we produce, or at least we have the illusion that we control it. And being very close to Complexio, I also understood how important security and privacy was for Complexio, and how it was one of the cornerstone layer of their product. And this is also what attracts me to them, is that it gives you the same level of comfort of security than any other software that you would buy. You can decide whether you want it on premise, you want it in your own cloud environment. It gives you the flexibility to do it, but especially it adapts to your level of security that you have in-house. It doesn't spread the data out. It uses LLMs which are secure and controlled, where we know that it doesn't require huge amount of computational power that needs crazy data centers with nuclear power plants to be able to run and learn and teach. And it can easily be controlled and ring-fenced. And I think that at an enterprise level, it's a priority for most of the CEOs to make sure that their information stays where it needs to be. And of course, cybersecurity is a risk that everybody knows, but Complexio doesn't add an extra layer of fragility. It actually sits in your own system, and you just enhance the information that you have internally. And this is what I really liked.
I thought it was also interesting what you said there about computational power, because for a small to medium-sized business, might not have the budget to allocate to this. So it democratizes all of the access to AI, because today you read a lot about, OpenAI draws this much, and we need to build these kind of data centers just to power the usage of this. So that must have also been reassuring for you when you were looking into it, that actually, no, we don't need to tap into another whole energy center for this.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not going to talk about decarbonization and everything, but I mean, it must come into the heads of everyone, and the money and the allocation of funds that you're putting into IT. First of all, our industry is lacking in terms of IT investments. I think we've always, whoever I've been talking to, they've always looked at IT systems as something which was additional and not integrated into their investment or their operational costs. So we were lagging way behind all the other industries in terms of investment and catching up. So the allocation of budget for IT resources have always been to the minimum. We as a company, I think, were on the upper hand by integrating at our scale an integrated IT department. And in terms, we understand that we need to spend a little, not too much.
Also, coming back to your point about the privacy and the trust that gives you. So when you can see in Complexio, you can see the steps that have been taken to reach a certain automation, and you can see exactly where the sources come from. What was that experience for you when you saw that? And you mentioned a little bit already, but if you can just elaborate a little bit more on that.
I mean, if we move from the understanding to the automation, what was very interesting is the assessment of each automation, which I found really, really interesting. And it's not only about how we're going to do it, it's about why we should do it or why we shouldn't do it, which was very interesting at a management level, because they managed to incorporate in the AI tool the reasoning of the pros and the cons. So you had literally a SWOT analysis for every automation, and every automation could have been done, but then what does it mean for the rest of your organization? Because if you take any single workflow, it a little bit unbalances the rest if all of a sudden something is automated and the rest is not automated. So it was very interesting to see the pros and the cons, and at the management level, the level of granularity of information and the capacity to actually walk through the whole reasoning of the proposal is key to actually take a decision whether we want to automate one process or not. And the good thing is that the human is always in control, in the sense that there's always oversight. We talk about human in the middle or who human on top. I think that was something that Danny mentioned in his previous podcast. And that's very key because, first of all, when you have human in the middle, you give the capacity to every employee to make sure that they're in control, and then it becomes an assistant to them and not just to the company. And then human on top gives the management the ability to actually make sound decisions with an amount of information that is required to make a proper decision.
For you then, I can hear how you're seeing sort of a change in the way that we work from this. How do you envision then this sort of technology moving the day-to-day, perhaps for employees of different levels forward? And how should any CEO that's looking into making this sort of investment, how should they be thinking about it?
I have the long view and the short view, right? I'll start with the long view.
Perfect. Please do.
The long view is for me, I can't really put a time stamp on it, but I evaluated anything between 5 to 10 years. And I envisage our office without any computers in the desks and without any single desks, to be honest. I had a vision where AI was taking over all the computational work, all the data entry, all the grunt work, the replying of the emails, the data processing. And then we would have the systems ready to listen, and we would have an employee which would be digital, where we ask, okay, we're in a meeting here. Can you actually pop out, the statistics on this and the data on that and the this on that? And instead of having tablets or a workstation, we would have a screen in the meeting room, microphones, video projectors, and we would all meet within individuals and trying to strategize and find ways to actually make the company grow, be creative into creating new relationship with strategic partners, and interact as humans as we should. Instead of being behind our computer, actually compiling numbers and everything, we would create conversation, we would create ideas together, because that's what humans are good at, feelings and creative. So it's a complete change of perspective from, having a lot of people typing and using the mouse and doing the work towards the machine doing the work, and then us in the company just be humans. So it's a radical change. I still can't figure out how we're going to work it out, but it will probably free up some time, and we will be able to actually enjoy what we like and have a better life balance.
I think it also takes away the frustration of like, what is it, Sunday blues, right? Where you know that you have a week ahead of just working with your screen.
Yeah.
And work in general it's a bit ironic, but because the more technology we have, the less human we become in our operations. And as you said, what actually drives a business forward, or almost what creates a business originally, is that human spark of ideas, creativity, collaboration. And then the further along we go, the less there is that possibility available almost. So it is really interesting to hear what your vision is. And I think that is something that everyone within a corporation would look forward to having, but it would also evolve the company so much faster if you're able to sit down and go, here's what I'm thinking, this is what we should do, and all of this, that again, bringing back the human side into the company.
And nurturing innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned before, it's not about reducing headcount. And I think this very much brings that idea back into focus of why that really isn't where you should be measuring how AI adds to your business. It's not about reducing the headcount, it's about how much it brings out of the people that you have, perhaps.
For me, I think that the main risk as a management level is to keep up with the evolution of the tools and how we can implement as quickly as possible the evolution and the new technology. So it's not about where we're going to be, it's about how fast we're going to reach that, and how we can implement that change in a humanly digestible way. And bringing in the culture of change in a company is something that is not very easy. We've been working on it now for a year since we started working with Complexio, because we knew it was going to come. So gradually we try to implement the idea that there's a philosophy of change, and whoever adapts the quickest is the one that's going to survive, and not the strongest. And again, it's dealing with human beings. It's actually making sure that people understand, that they're reassured, that we take them by the hand, we show them what is good for them, and we get the feedback. Because at the end of the day, technology, everybody lives with it at their different rhythm. This one will create a plain level field where the technology will actually help the ones who are lagging to actually be at the same level as everybody else. So I think that's going to be a plus. But again, it's a hard work of making everybody understand what it can do for them, how it can do for them, reassuring them that, if they're good at what they're doing, they're going to be even better after it.
You raise an interesting point there with that adaptability, because it's important that we as humans are adaptable, but it's also important that the technology that we use are capable of adapting to how we evolve. Because if you have, and let's go into automations, if you have created an automation and all of a sudden you start using new tools, so you start doing that process in a different way, if you then have to have someone coming back and kind of manually retyping, as you mentioned at the beginning of this recording, you're kind of running to keep up rather than staying ahead.
Yep.
So that is something that Complexio also offers, is this innate adaptability to how your business operates. So then with that, there's also kind of the risk and the trust element again, right? So what does responsible AI adoption mean to you? And how do you kind of balance the speed with control of transparency and auditability?
I've touched about it a little bit before, but I think responsible AI means different things for different people. So I'm not going to go into the issues that LLM has on the bias, on the ethics and all of that, because that's a separate item. And I don't think it's relevant here, because it's purely business focused. So at the end of the day, the way I see Complexio working is it basically embedded the culture of the company, because it learns from the data of the company. So it doesn't learn from the data outside. It strictly learns from the information that you feed them with, which is ultimately whatever your company does. So if your culture is set in stone and trust is one of them, then Complexio lives with that. I think the responsible way of acting is to find the right balance between speed of implementation and comfort and confidence from the users. And there's going to be a path from here to full automation. And I think that path is also a blessing because it enables us to learn as we go. And instead of going from a binary revolution from 0 to 1, where 1 is the automation fully and 0 is where we're at now, we kind of have a learning curve where we can adapt with the evolution of the tool towards full automation. And I think that is a little bit of a gift that we have, us Marfin, as being early stage adopters, to be able to see that change. And I think every company who really wants to go there ultimately should start as quickly as possible, because the acceleration from whoever is around us, and especially the competition, is going to be quicker and quicker. And if you want to do and catch up, it's going to hurt.
And we've spoken about the value that it brings humans and into this, but if you were to speak again to someone who's looking for, like, what would be the more tangible returns on the investment for the business, what do you see that?
If I take the human element out, in the sense that the human feelings, automation can be counted in saved hours or days or minutes, or you take the unit you want, and the moment you have an automation, it means that a human being doesn't press a keyboard. And this is how you measure your return on investment, is how much time is human time is saved by this tool.
And where do you see for sort of the next generation of people coming into the industry with moving forward with having this technology? What do you think what will the future look like for them? And also for you as a leader, how will your role evolve with such a technology?
I'll take the second question, right? And as a leader, I think the biggest challenge is the amount of information that we're going to have at our hands. The rest is a little bit like money. I mean, whether it's a human being that does it or it's a machine, at the end of the day, the job needs to be done, right? So that part is just means, unfortunately. I hate to say it like this, but unfortunately, when you have a fight between humans and machine, it's just about means. In terms of management, we will have a company which is way more efficient, way more reactive, so capable of giving better service quicker, but also with a lot more insight, because we'll have all the data that we want, which used to be unstructured, completely structured, where we can run analysis, we can run whatever KPIs we want on it. We'll have plenty of dashboard if we need them. And we'll have, I think, our brain doesn't even know how much information we can dig out from it. And in one way, it's scary because we need to be quite innovative and creative, and we don't really know what we can rely on, in the sense of what information can the system dig out, and what we can do with that kind of information. But again, AI brings us a flourishing amount of brain capacity and insight that we will need to deal with. So I think it's exciting in a way, and I'm really skeptical, or at least interested to see, once everybody has adopted AI, what the world will look like. Because right now it's a little bit of a race to competitiveness, and I think we're going to have between 2 to 5 years where this race is going to happen, and once everyone is more or less at the same level of adoption, then it's going to be a different name.
Oh, which is very exciting. Final question, just because you are so deeply involved with Complexio's development, but what's sort of been when you are at, say, conferences and so on, have you had other leaders come up to you and kind of be like, tell me what's going on, what's the insight about this, and what are the usual questions that you get then?
I have, it's funny you asked that question, because it's a little bit of a cycle. So there was a lot of excitement at the beginning, and then now everybody's starting to catch up again because they feel like they're missing the wave. And yet, a lot of my counterparts don't really understand what they're going to do with AI. Everybody wants to use it. Everybody wants to actually dig in. So they invest their mind, they invest money in some project, in some use cases. But at the end of the day, they can't really put something tangible to one single use case or one specific problem that they want to solve. And then it's all about, okay, can we actually have the data grouped into one ChatGPT and then have something that questions it? So I think the industry doesn't really know where it's going. And the fact that working with Complexio and bridging that gap from the tools and the knowledge, which is, I think, the missing piece of AI, is that they're starting to be very good at the tools, but they're less good at the knowledge. Or at least they could be very good, but nobody really figured it out. And the question here is a little bit the question you ask, right? So it's about reliability. It's about what is the ROI and what am I going to do with it and how much can I save? Basically, everybody's looking at that kind of questions, which I think it's, in my opinion, a little bit short-sighted.
What sort of questions should they be asking?
They shouldn't be asking any questions. They should jump on the ship and see where the voyage brings them.
Perfect. Good. Well, on that note, thank you for today. It's been very insightful to have your comments and you sharing your journey with Complexio, and we're obviously very excited to have you on board with us and looking forward to seeing where the next 5 years takes us.
I'm excited too. Thank you.